Hello, welcome back to Spiritual Maintenance. I am your spiritual advocate, Mystic Mary. So yesterday I had watched a video from the YouTube channel I Scry with Steph regarding water, and it exploded a download into me where I just kept um, journaling over and over again. I filled about three or no, it's more like 4 or 5 pages of just what I was getting. And so this video is to basically sum up what was downloaded. I may do another video kind of where I'll draw the way I saw it, um, just to give some visuals. But it felt so overwhelming in the terms of getting this information out there that I don't want to wait for me to make that visual to get the information out. And essentially, it comes down to communication. Spirituality is communication. The measure of how spiritual healthy you are is determined by the effectiveness by which you speak. And the way it was shown to me is I saw this giant ice block with these air pockets in it. And it like kind of zoomed into the air pockets, and I heard the um, the verse, the Spirit of the Lord hovered over the waters of the deep. And then there was the whole let there be light. But the way it was shown to me, the let there be light, was this air pocket. Um, it's like the force of it. So thinking in terms of like the um, scientific terms of back in elementary school when they showed you, like, you put a box or a block or a book or something on a table, even though it's not moving, there's still that force that is happening. And remember, that force is energy. And so it was like this air pocket was creating force, and the more that it had this love and this desire for the water, the more pressure would build up, thus starting to melt the water. And as it melted and that pressure built up, particles began to manipulate, just like as they do with fire, and they become different things. And thus, algae began to be created and other things. And then um, basically, it like popped into a model like Earth versus Earth, if you get my drift. I know if you say it like this, they'll flag you sometimes. So I don't want that to happen because I would like for this message to get out. So it showed it to me like that. And so then I saw the earth in the middle, you've got the air above, the water below. And what I understood from that is that it's the masculine and the feminine energy, and you have the creation in the inside. So thinking in terms of connections and of children, the masculine aspect holds space, creates a safety for what is being created, whether it's a child, um, a relationship, whatever. And the water aspect is the feminine, which holds and supports and takes in part of that burden. So it was like, half of the creation was above the water, the other half was below, kind of. And so it was like, supporting in that way of like taking on the burdens of the creation or the relationship. And then it showed me like another bubble that was coming along the side, and that reflected, again, relationship. And kind of going back again, there's so much information. The air aspect, the masculine aspect, was thought. The water aspect was emotion. And so I saw a bubble coming in that had equal parts air and water, just as this one did. And it came together, and the water from this one went in, and the air from this one went out. And it showed me that disconnection of relationships where one person is receiving while the other one um, is taking. Though, so I'm pausing for a minute because it was like this one was the one that was taking, the one that was full of hot air, and this one was um, giving. Oh, it's the bubbles. The bubbles were going up, so that's the giving, and that was the taking because heat goes up. Okay, got it. Um, and so, in this one, filled with waters, filled with emotions, think of like drowning in emotions. So, this one was full of water, this one was full of hot air. And then it showed me that this one can't take it anymore, it splits, and basically it like loses part of itself, because when there's too much water and there's not enough air creating that steam, that pressure, the ice then starts melting everything, and so it's almost like it's shedding all of those emotions. And then it was like a teeny tiny, again, still the same model but very small, and I heard um like the new you, the new life, or whatever. And then this one up here, because it was so full of air and the pressure was so intense and the water had nowhere else to go, it was like all the water around it just started melting and it became emotionally tumultuous. And so it's just like overwhelmed with emotion. um, and then I saw them again join back together and do this thing. And basically it was like this side needs to build themselves back up, and this side needs to learn empathy so it can actually take in the emotions, knowing that they are safe. And then what I also saw is that as this model continues its give and take. So think of like rain, and so the water's taking in, and what happens when the rain and air rating, the air goes down. So it was just like rain was above and bubbles were below, and it was this constant, because bubbles rise. So it was this constant give and take, this movement, action, and that caused more friction, thus causing um, the model to grow, because it was then melting what was around it as well. And the water that was melting represented emotions, and within that water of course comes more air pockets. So I got the message again from a previous vision I had in the past of, through deep emotions truth is revealed. So basically the purpose of this life is to experience it, to not be afraid of sadness, don't be afraid of anger. um, Overcome your fears and anxieties, because the insight that comes from feeling it, experiencing it, and expressing it, it just keeps bringing more and more opportunities for growth, for experience, for wisdom. Um, and then, those air pockets, they all start coming together, and eventually the block of ice in the end just becomes a perfect balance and alignment of air and water. um, and then of course, because of the friction and everything, it's creating creation in the center of it. And so then I asked spirit, like, okay, well, what does this mean? And I heard the word is the way, the truth, and the life. So I looked it up. It's a verse from John, but it says it was Jesus speaking. And he said, I am the way, the truth, and the light. So I was just like, it says Jesus is. And then I heard the word became flesh. And so that's where I came to the conclusion, verification, I guess, um, that when you overcome the fears, the anxieties, all of that, to speak your truth, you're in perfect balance. And then through that modeling of speaking truth, then others around you can overcome their fear of avoidance or anxiety, depending where they're at. And the anger is like that, is the air, the sadness is the water, and there has to be that constant release, and that's that going back and forth. So the crying through the anger, because when you have too much anger built up, that's when depression happens. And when you have too much sadness built up, that's when rage happens. So think of all like hurricane, essentially, is kind of what's going on in that type of a model. And then the other part that came up as well is the water side. That's the giver. That is the anxious attachment style. The clinginess, the always wanting to do for validation, that eventually, when there's too much of that, it becomes codependent. And then when it's way too much of that, it becomes borderline personality disorder. And then the other side is too much air, and that is the that overthinking, the kind of avoiding the emotions, um, that uh, turns into, so it's avoiding emotions and avoiding connection for fear that the person that they're trying to connect with may know their true self and might not like them anymore. So both kind of um, stem from abandonment. And Jimmy on Relationships is a wonderful resource, if you want a YouTube channel for that as well, on anxious and avoidant attachment styles. Um, so that avoidant then leads to addiction, which then leads to narcissistic personality disorder. So, kind of going on that, I'm still going to be channeling everything that I get as time goes on, because I think this is a good place to share that instead of just in my notebooks. But this channel is going to take a turn in that I kind of already started it through the assertiveness skills, but I'm going to do even more videos on effective communication, since apparently that is how um, we are fully aligned with ourselves, with spirit, and can connect with others and make this world a much better place. So I hope that came out in a way that you understand it. Again, I might no, I'm gonna commit myself to it. I'm gonna do a visual of it, because I know there are visual learners out there that it just might be easier to see it. So I will do a whole visual of it as well, and we'll just take that as like a refresher of it as we're continuing on through um, creating communication styles. Again, I hope this helped, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.